What if I told you that the freedom we seek so much begins precisely when you disappear? Not running away, not hiding, not disappearing out of cowardice, but disappearing in the deepest sense. Stop supporting the illusion of who you believe you are. What if peace wasn't in finding something new, but in gently letting go of everything you're not? Have you ever noticed the daily effort it takes to be someone? The work of maintaining your image, your titles, your coherence, your reputation, as if there were a huge building inside us, supported by beams of anxiety, fear, and the need for acceptance. But what if this building didn't need to exist? What if true relief isn't in achieving more, but in letting it all go? Disappearing here is not dying, it's being born again without the weight of the character. It's walking lightly, because there is no longer anything that needs to be defended. You are not your name, it's not your profession, it's not your story. These are all pages of a book that you carry, but you are the white space between the words. You are the silence that precedes the sound. And the most curious thing, the more you disappear into the world, the more you encounter life. Because only when the I dissolves can existence be heard without the noise of identity. All our lives we are taught to stand out, shining, being someone important, leaving a mark. But we are almost never taught to disappear. Silence the mind, stopping seeking approval, stop chasing a definition. Alan Watts said that the ego is a social convention, a useful fiction. But look, even useful fiction is still fiction. We believe in the mask so much that we forget the face it covers, and the peace we seek in travels, love's titles, achievements, always seems to escape, because it is not in what is achieved, but in what is abandoned. There is a subtle art to disappearing in peace. It's not about running away from responsibilities or denying life. On the contrary, it's living with so much presence that the past and the future lose their strength. It's abandoning the struggle to be someone and thus allowing yourself to be everything. It's when the mirror no longer shows a role, but just a look empty of pretensions. Free, curious, silent. It is in this space that freedom arises. Not a freedom to do anything, but a freedom to not need to do anything to be valid. Have you ever noticed how we spend our lives comparing ourselves, always trying to figure out if we measure up? But height of what, from who, for whom? The art of disappearing is to stop measuring. It's letting life be as it is. It's accepting that you don't need to be special to be sacred, because you are already the very manifestation of mystery. The wind that passes through the leaves doesn't care about leaving a legacy. The flower that blooms does not need to be recognized to be beautiful. And maybe you just need to remember that you are also nature, that your essence is made of the same silent void that fills the entire universe. The problem is not that we have a self. The problem is that we are slaves to it. We think he is all there is, that it must be preserved, perfected, magnified. But see, the I is an idea, a set of memories, thoughts, and interpretations. He is the narrator of the story, but he is not the story itself. When you disappear, the narrator falls silent. And then you finally hear the music of existence, without lyrics, without speech, without the need for meaning. And then, perhaps for the first time, you dance. And isn't it curious how when we are truly present, we don't feel the need to assert ourselves? There is no effort. There is no who am I or what do you think of me. There is just being. Breathe, to look, to feel. Time slows down. The world is no longer a threat. People are no longer enemies. Everything becomes part of the same dance. The breeze that touches your face is you. The sound of a child's laughter is you. The falling leaves in autumn are you, because you are not something within life. You are life itself experiencing itself. But disappearing takes courage, because it means dying to everything you thought you were. It means abandoning the security of labels, certainties, plans. It's walking with your eyes closed, trusting that existence carries you, and she carries it. It always carried. It was you who was tense trying to steer the ship. But the river doesn't need a paddle. It just needs you to trust the flow. You don't need to be reminded. You don't need to be admired. You don't have to win. You just need to be here, whole, silent, missing but awake, present but empty. And in that void lives all the plenitude you sought in excess. It's when you disappear that you finally appear, not as a character but as a presence, not as someone but as everything. And so disappearing, you discover that there was never anyone here, just the eternal game of consciousness playing at being you for a moment. How lucky to be able to forget who we are, to remember what we are, because deep down disappearance is just the beginning of a deeper memory that we have always been infinity playing at finitude. Because, see, disappearing in peace is not a dramatic act. It is not renunciation full of suffering or a desperate escape from reality. It's more like a gentle breeze that crosses a field and disappears without saying goodbye. It is an intimate and silent gesture that happens inside, almost imperceptible, but deeply transformative. It's when you sit with yourself, and for the first time you don't feel a rush to go anywhere. He does not feel the need to justify himself, to prove, to explain. It simply is. That's when you realize that most of your anxiety came from the effort to maintain this image of you in the world, like a statue that needed to be constantly polished, fed with praise, defended from criticism, kept upright at all costs. But deep down, what happens when you let that statue crumble? What's left? A space, an emptiness, and in that void, the sacred lives. The oldest spiritual traditions have always known this. The mystics, the hermits, the poets of silence, all pointed to that inner place where the ego ceases and reality reveals itself, not as something that can be conquered, but as something that has always been there, waiting for the noise of the mind to silence. And this does not require you to abandon your home retreat to the mountains or break your relationships. None of that. True disappearance is internal. It's disappearing in the crowd. It's looking into someone's eyes and not carrying a paper between you. It's listening without interpreting, speaking without protecting yourself, loving without getting attached. Peaceful disappearance is the art of not being an obstacle to life. It's letting it pass through you like the wind through the leaves. No locks, no walls, no filters. Have you ever noticed how everything in us is conditioned to resist? We resist what we feel. We resist time. We resist impermanence. We resist the idea of not knowing. But everything we resist persists, and everything we accept dissolves. When you disappear, the resistance also disappears, and with it, suffering. Have you ever noticed that the most beautiful things in life have no owner? The sunset, the smell of rain, the song of a bird. No one can possess these things. They are free, and that is why they touch our soul. In the same way, when you disappear as an ego, as a character, you also become unreachable. Not because it is distant, but because it is dissolved. And this is freedom in its purest form, because no one can control that which cannot be named. And then suddenly you begin to feel a peace that depends on nothing, a joy without a reason, a contentment that needs no explanation, because everything that was once tension, the need to fit in, to stand out, to be someone, is gone. You are naked of concepts, nude of identities, and that, far from being scary, is deeply liberating. You begin to see that there has never actually been a you separate from life. It was always life, just life playing at being this character for a while. But now the stage is empty, and in the emptiness of the stage, you hear the silence of the universe pulsing within you. A silence that is not the absence of sound, but pure a presence. And then you realize the disappearance was not a loss, it was a comeback. Return to the vastness from which everything arises. Return to the state of being prior to the idea of I. You are no longer at the center of the world. You are the world. Every movement, every sound, every person, every pain, every laugh, everything is you. Everything happens within the space that you are. Life is no longer something that happens to you. It is you happening moment by moment. There is no more separation. There is no more outside and inside. There is only what is. And what it is enough. And as you melt away silently like a mist slowly dissipating under the morning sun, you begin to realize that the entire world changes. Not because the world itself has changed, it remains the same in appearance, but because your eyes, freed from the lens of ego, see for the first time. You look at a face, and you no longer see the function it fulfills, the role it represents. You see the mystery. The same mystery that exists in you. It's as if by disappearing, you finally see life as it is, without the filters of utility comparison narrative. Like a baby, looking at everything for the first time, but with the awareness of someone who has already gone through all the illusions and come back. And in this new look, everything shines. Everything is sacred. Even what was once banal. The sound of a kettle on the stove, light passing through a curtain, the accidental touch of a hand, nothing is wasted anymore, because everything is perceived in its entirety, in its silent glory. And look, you don't need a meaning for everything. You don't demand any more answers, because now you know that the mystery is meaning itself. Not knowing is the portal. You are no longer in a hurry to get anywhere. Life is no longer a journey with a final destination. It is a dance that is renewed with each step. When you disappear, time loses its tyranny. You are no longer a prisoner of before and after. The past, with its pain and glories, loses the power to define you. The future, with its promises and threats, no longer manipulates you. There is only now. There is only the pulse of this moment. And in this now, there is no room for who I am. There is just being pure without form, without owner, without name. And this being is full, because you don't need justification. Many are afraid of disappearing because they think that by letting go of their ego, they will lose everything they are. But it's exactly the opposite. When you disappear, you become everything. You are no longer limited to your history, your culture, your language. You are like the sky sheltering clouds, sunstorms, stars, but never confusing yourself with any of these forms. And it is at this point that peace begins to inhabit you, not as an emotional state, but as a way of existing. There is no more fighting. There is no longer resistance to what is. Even pain, when it arises, is welcomed. Even fear, when it comes, is understood. You no longer need to push anything away, because there is no one trying to protect themselves anymore. The art of disappearing in peace is actually the art of trusting. To trust that life knows what it is doing, that everything flows according to an intelligence that cannot be understood by the mind. And when you stop intervening, manipulating, trying to control, this intelligence begins to guide you. You move without knowing exactly where, but with a silent certainty that everything is okay. You speak without rehearsing. You act without calculating. And everything seems to fit together with an almost absurd lightness. It's as if the universe breathes through you, as if existence was playing and you had finally accepted to participate in the game without needing to win, without needing to understand. You start laughing more, not a mocking laugh, but a soft laugh of someone who understood that everything is, at the same time, deeply serious and deeply light. This disappearance is a dismantling. One allows oneself to slip through the cracks of control. You surrender, not out of weakness, but out of wisdom, because you see with crystal clarity that everything you tried to protect, your pride, your image, your name, your position, was precisely what imprisoned you. And when you let that drop, something opens, an internal space, a void full of presence, an absence that pulses like life. You walk in the world as if you no longer carry anything on your back. No past, no plans, no expectations. And yet it is more alive than ever, because you are no longer looking at life from the outside trying to interpret it. You are her inside. This is the art of disappearing in peace, becoming so transparent, so light, so surrendered, that life can pass through you without hindrance. And when you do, you discover something hauntingly simple, that everything you were searching for deep down was already here. And when you enter this state of peaceful disappearance, you begin to notice how everything before felt like a constant effort. Being someone, staying consistent, following goals, impressing others. All of this now sounds like old noise, like a forgotten radio playing in the background. There is no longer any need to explain yourself, not even to yourself. The mind used to demanding justifications for every gesture, every emotion, every silence, silences, because when the someone disappears, there is no one left to answer for. There is no internal audience to be convinced, there is no judge hidden among the thoughts. And with that, lightness sets in. A lightness that is not the opposite of weight, but the absence of it. You start to live without the script, without the invisible script of how a self should behave, respond, feel. Spontaneity emerges like an ancient river that has always been there but blocked by the dams of fear and conditioning. You are no longer trying to live up to anything. You are not trying to be what they expect, nor what you idealized. Freedom begins when the effort to exist ceases. This is where existence shines in its purest state, unpretentious, fluid, vibrant. Disappearing in this sense is letting life itself breathe for you. It's as if you return to being the space that precedes all forms, like the blank canvas before painting, like the silence before music. And in this space, everything is allowed. Laughter comes without reason, crying comes without shame, presence comes without intention. There is no need for interpretation. Everything that is simply is, and you don't try to change, don't try to beautify, don't try to understand. You become receptive to life, like an open field to the rain. No resistance, no filter, no rush. This receptivity is one of the greatest beauties of disappearance, because it allows everything to happen inside you, without scratching you. Emotions come and go, thoughts arise and dissolve. External situations touch you, but do not dominate you. You are there, but you are not trapped. Participate in life, but don't get confused with roles. Loves, but without getting attached. Suffer, but without closing yourself off. Pain stops being an enemy. It becomes just a passing cloud in the sky of your consciousness, and perhaps the deepest beauty of it all lies in realizing that by disappearing, you become available. Available for the other, for the world, for the mystery. Because while you were full of yourself, there was no space. Everything was about you, your opinion, your story, your place, your drama. Now you are pure space. Space where others can exist without being judged. Space where the moment can flourish without being compared. Space where life can finally breathe without control. And when you find someone who has also disappeared even partially, there is a silent recognition, a sparkle in the eye. There is no need for too many words, because you are not relating as masks, but as presences, like voids dancing around each other without pressure, without obligation, just being, just touching existence together without wanting to shape it. This type of encounter is rare, but not because it is difficult, but because it requires surrender. Most still cling to their own history like armor. You're afraid of disappearing, of not being remembered, of not being important. But the truth is that only when you disappear does your essence appear. Only when you let go of control can something bigger guide you. And this something is not external. It is not a separate entity. It is the very life that was in you all the time, but hidden behind your desire to be someone. And see, this detachment from identity does not mean indifference. On the contrary, you start to care more, but not in a possessive or needy way. You care because now you feel like everything is you. The pain of others touches you as yours. The beauty of others moves you as if it were yours. Because deep down, it is. When you disappear, boundaries dissolve. What was me and you becomes just us, and this us extends to the stones, to the wind, to the stars. And the more you delve into this state of conscious disappearance, the more you realize that what you called my life was never something separate from life as a whole. There is no real dividing line between what happens inside you and what unfolds in the world. What changes is the perception. Before, it was as if you looked at the world from inside a box, judging, classifying, protecting yourself. Now, without the box, everything goes through you, but it doesn't hurt you. Everything touches you, but it doesn't hold you back, because you are no longer focused on protecting an identity. You are available, and this availability is so rare that it's scary. People got used to relationships between characters. There is always a role being played. There is always something to prove armor, to maintain. But when you disappear, you relate from the being, not from the role. And that changes everything. Conversations gain depth, even in silence. The simplest gestures, like handing a glass of water or sitting next to someone in silence, carry a presence that touches more than 1,000 words. You no longer live to impress, lives to express, and this expression is free, spontaneous, without calculation. You start to trust more in the flow of existence, not out of naivety, but out of experience. You see that whenever you try to control, you suffer. Every time you try to hold on, you get tired. Whenever you try to force it, it creates tension. And whenever you let go, everything finds its natural place. The flower does not need to be forced open. The moon does not need to be pushed to rise. There is an invisible rhythm governing everything. And now that you're not trying to impose yourself to that rhythm, you dance to it. And dancing with the rhythm of life is perhaps the most profound act of wisdom one can know. Many fear disappearance because they think that without a strong ego, they will be manipulated, they will be weak, they will lose control. But it's just the opposite. The ego is fragile, insecure, anxious. He lives at war to maintain his image. When you disappear, fear disappears with it. Not because you become invulnerable, but because there is no longer anyone trying to protect you. Fragility is no longer a threat. Vulnerability turns into strength, and confidence in life becomes your new foundation. The paradox is this: you only find security when you stop looking for it. You only find peace when you stop wanting peace, because the search in itself is already a form of agitation. It is the assumption that something is wrong now and will only be right in the future. But now is never wrong. The now is all there is. And when you surrender completely to the now, you disappear as separation. You stop being someone trying to position yourself in time and space, and you become the very moment that happens. And then life shows you its secret beauty. You begin to see poetry where before there was only routine. You see light in the eyes of strangers. You see meaning in the apparent chaos, because you are no longer trying to interpret fit control. You're just seeing, feeling, being. Disappearance is a return to simplicity. It's you naked of concepts, walking through the world as if you know that nothing needs to be said to be lived. To outside eyes, you may not seem any different, but inside everything changed. Reactions decrease, the urgency disappears, the need to win, convince, prove. All of this dissolves. And in its place, a calm presence arises like a silent fire burning, peacefully in the center of the chest. You are no longer at war with anything, and because you are not at war, you can finally love. And this love is not the romantic love of stories, nor the conditioned love of culture. It is love as radical acceptance, love as recognition of unity, love as the permission for everything to be as it is. You love yourself not as identity, but as presence. Love the other not as a function, but as a being. Love life not as a succession of achievements, but as a silent miracle that happens even without you understanding. And then, in that space where the I has dissolved, and only the clarity of the moment remains, you begin to notice something even more subtle. Language itself becomes limited. The words that once seemed to carry such important meanings, success, failure, purpose, identity, now sound like empty shells, echoes of a desperate attempt to define the indefinable. As if the mind with all its vocabulary were a child trying to draw infinity with a broken pencil. And that's okay. You no longer need words to live. You are already the Word made flesh. In this state of inner disappearance, there is no longer a separation between what you feel and what you experience. You are no longer watching your life from the outside like a spectator, trying to understand the script. You are the plot itself, but now without the need to know the ending. You are the wind that blows without a map, without direction. And yet everything fits, because the meaning is no longer in the objectives, but in the intensity with which you are present in each gesture. Washing the dishes becomes a sacred act. Watching the dust dance in the morning light becomes a meditation. The pauses between words become more important than speeches. You begin to realize that the disappearance didn't take you away from the world. It immersed you in it. Deeply, completely, no defenses, no walls. You are naked in the face of existence, and that is not uncomfortable. It is liberating. Because, for once, you're not trying to be seen, you are simply seeing. His eyes are open not to be recognized, but to recognize. The world is now a temple. Every living being is a master. Each stone carries a lesson of silence. And even when a conflict, a pain, a loss arises, you no longer hide. Don't run away. You allow the pain to pass through you like a storm that purifies the air. Because you know that you are not the storm nor the tree that bends in the wind. You are the space where it all happens, and this space is indestructible. This space does not need to assert itself. He doesn't get attached. He doesn't defend himself. He just is. And because of that, he is invulnerable. Not in the sense of not feeling, but in the sense of not getting lost in feelings. Anger comes and goes, sadness comes and goes, even fear comes and goes, but you remain. You are the backdrop that doesn't change, the silence behind the sound, the screen where all the pictures pass, but which is never stained. And the beautiful thing is that the more you disappear, the more deeply you connect with others, because now there are no more two. The I and you are seen as mirages dancing on the hot sand. The separation was just a trick of the mind. Now, you look into someone's eyes and see yourself, see the same full emptiness, see the same desire to be free. You see the same fear of disappearing and the same desire to disappear. Because deep down, we all carry this longing for home. And home here is not a place. It is a state of being, a state where we no longer need to prove ourselves. And see, disappearing is not disappearing from life, it's disappearing from the illusion. It's letting the mask fall without haste, without pain. It's realizing that without it your light shines brighter, that your presence becomes medicinal, that your existence becomes a silent invitation for others to also let go, to rest, to disappear. And this type of presence, which doesn't demand anything, which doesn't want to convince anyone, which doesn't need to be right, is rare. And it is sacred, because it doesn't compete with the world. She hugs, she welcomes, she loves because she is full of emptiness, and that is why she can overflow. And as this disappearance deepens, life stops being a linear trajectory, with a beginning, middle, and end, and starts to be perceived as an eternal cycle of emergences and dissolutions. Everything comes and everything goes. People come and go. Emotions wax and wane. Bodies bloom and age. nothing remains except the consciousness that observes. And when you disappear, as a form that's all that's left the space where everything happens. A silent but vibrant space, empty but full, non-existent in time but eternally present. You no longer feel separated from events. There is no longer me here and the world out there. There is no longer a need to resist what happens, nor to wish things were different. The mind which previously lived, trapped in judgments, this is good, this is bad, this should be happening, this shouldn't be like this, begins to silence. Not out of indifference, but because you finally realize that what is enough. And more than enough, it is perfect in its imperfection. It's all part of a mysterious balance that can only be felt, never explained. You become like water, flexible, no form of its own but capable of taking all forms. You can't resist the curves of life. If the path takes you up, you go up. If it goes down, you go down. If it gets dark, you watch. And if it clears, you celebrate. Because you are no longer trying to dominate the current. You have become the current itself. And this type of surrender, which is not submission but lucidity, transforms every second into an intimate miracle. The sound of a bird is no longer just background noise. It becomes a divine symphony. The texture of food breathing during a bath, the warmth of an intertwined hand. Everything is experienced with meditative intensity, as if you had returned to childhood but with the wisdom of someone who went through the hell of identity and came back in one piece. Disappearing in peace is discovering that the world doesn't need your idealized version. He needs your real presence. And presence can only exist where there is no effort to be something. Presence is what remains when the actor leaves the scene, when the character is silent. When you stop seeking to be and just are, presence cannot be faked. She feels, it vibrates, she touches the other without needing to say anything. And when you are present, life offers you gifts that cannot be bought: serenity, lightness, lucidity, freedom. The deepest freedom is not doing whatever you want. It's no longer being a slave to yourself. It's no longer needing external approval to feel like you're enough. It means no longer depending on achievements, praise, recognition. It's no longer being afraid of the void, because now you live in the void, and you see that it is not a dark hole to be avoided, but the silent womb from which everything is born, including you. Again and again and again, and even the roles you still fulfill, as father, mother, professional, friend, are now lived with lightness. Not because they lost their value, but because they lost their weight. You no longer identify with them, you just inhabit them as if they were temporary clothes that you wear for a while and then return to the hangar of existence. This allows you to love more, care more, give more, because there is no longer fear of losing yourself in those roles. You already know that even without them you continue, maybe even more whole. And that's what disappearance reveals, that what you really are doesn't need guarantees. You don't need fame, memory, certainty. What you are cannot be destroyed. It cannot be forgotten, because it's not something that was born. It's what it always was. And this, when perceived with an open heart, dissolves all despair, all haste, all searching. The seeker disappears, and only silence remains. And that silence is everything. And as this silence becomes the background of all your movements, you begin to notice that even the thoughts, those that previously seemed so noisy, so inescapable, now pass by like leaves carried by a river. You no longer confuse them with yourself. They appear, yes, but you observe them with a kind of loving distance, like someone who sees an old friend agitated but doesn't let himself be carried away by him. Because now you know you are not the thoughts. You are the space where they arise and disappear, and in this space, which previously seemed empty, you find the most solid home you have ever known. The art of disappearing in peace is this: it is not disappearing into the world, but from the illusory world that you have created inside your head. A world where everything needed to make sense, where every gesture needed to be validated, where every mistake was a sentence and every success a salvation. This world was a prison, decorated with mirrors, beautiful on the outside, suffocating on the inside. And when you see this, you don't fight to escape. You just stop feeding. You let go. You turn off the lights and walk out the front door without making a sound. And out there outside this mental prison is the real, the simple, the immense. You begin to enjoy leisure without guilt, stillness without discomfort, being alone without loneliness. Because in essence, you are never alone. You have everything. You are with the sky, with the sound of the trees, with the breath that passes through you effortlessly. And that breathing, that simple inhalation and exhalation, becomes a living reminder you are already connected. He's already home, it's already whole. And the most beautiful thing is to realize that even in the midst of chaos, even surrounded by noise, obligations, crowds, you can still disappear. Because disappearance is not the absence of external noise. It is the absence of internal resistance. It's being at peace with what is. Even when it's difficult, even when it hurts, because now you don't hold on to the pain. It doesn't make it an identity. You feel it, yes, but you know that this too will pass. Everything will calm down, everything changes. Only consciousness remains. And then a deep tenderness arises, a tenderness for everything that lives, for those who haven't yet realized that they can disappear, for those who still debate within the characters. You don't judge them, you understand them, because you were there too. You also fought to be someone, to prove something, to be seen, and now that you no longer need that, you become space for others. You become listening, you become presence. And that presence without form, without agenda, is the greatest gift you can offer the world. It's curious how when you disappear you begin to be felt more deeply by others, because you no longer impose barriers. There are no more defenses. You are there whole, naked of pretensions, real. And this invites the other person to let their guard down too, because when someone disappears, the truth appears. And when the truth comes out, love can finally breathe. Disappearing in peace is a revolutionary gesture. It is to refuse the logic of performance, speed, artificial importance. It's walking slower. Speak with more silence between words. Eat with more presence. Play with more listening. It's living without rigid plans, no armor, no urgency, because urgency belongs to the ego. The soul has its own time, and when you disappear, the soul's time becomes your time, and it is during this time that life begins to flourish, not like a spectacular explosion, but like a garden that grows without fanfare. You no longer need to be the most colorful flower. You are the soil itself, the wind itself, the rain itself, and in its fertile silence everything blooms, without you needing to control, without you needing to understand. And then when you settle into that invisible ground that is waking consciousness, you realize that the disappearance wasn't the end of anything. It was the beginning of everything. It was a return to the point before the name, before the body, before the story. A place where you are not something specific, but are available for everything. Where identity does not limit but dances like a light veil over an infinite space. You walk through the streets as if you weren't expecting anything, like someone who doesn't want anything. And because of that, every little thing turns into a miracle. A dog wagging its tail, a lady sweeping the sidewalk, a child looking at you with eyes of the universe. You are there, without making an effort to be there, without needing to support any version of yourself, without being anyone, and therefore being able to be everything. This is what the world needs most right now, people who are not busy being someone so they can be a presence. Presence that heals, who listens, what a ringer, who welcomes, that transforms not by force but by the absence of noise. It is not about living in denial of the world, but about seeing the world with clean eyes. The eyes of those who are no longer covered by the fog of the ego. You may still have responsibilities. You can love deeply. You can work, create, teach. But all of this comes from somewhere else. No longer a lack, but a silent abundance. You no longer do it to be loved. You do it because it overflows. Because life flows through you like gentle water, without fear, without rush. And in this flow, you find what everyone was looking for without knowing it: true freedom. The freedom to be whole where you are. To say yes instantly, to accept every curve of the path with an unarmed heart. Because in the end, there was no destination to be reached. There was only this now, this eternal moment which was always here waiting for you to stop running. And now you stop. You silence. You disappear. And as you disappear, you become the dance of life itself. No face, no name, no past. Just movement, just love, just presence. If this reflection touched something inside, you don't forget to like the video. This helps spread this message to more people who may also be ready to disappear in peace. Share with someone you feel needs to hear this. And of course, if you want to continue exploring these ideas with me, subscribe to the channel and activate the bell to receive the next meditations and conversations. The journey continues always inward until the next breath.